Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is David Novak. I am going to do a small book haul video today. I will actually open these up right now. There's 3 different books that have come in. They are books of poetry and in fact books of poetry in translation, which is sort of an unusual thing for me to do. As a rule, I don't read poetry in translation. As a rule, I tend not to read much poetry anyhow, and I don't know if I'll talk about these books on the channel or not, because I really am not inclined to read a book of poetry from cover to cover anyhow. It's the kind of thing I will dip into here and there. And so I'm not sure how that fits in with my whole reading program. I have a bunch of cats. One of them just jostled the camera there for a sec. Now, come on, you. And I don't know if you watch Brian at Bookish's channel, but he had a very nice video recently about the situation in Gaza. And one thing that I have done also as somewhat of a rule is to avoid paying any attention to current events and to politics. Now, I used to be concerned about those things. Let me see, I wrote a book called Against Holy War, trying to argue for a peaceful response to the 9/11 taking down of the Twin Towers in New York, a peaceful response. That idea did not fly. I wrote a play called War for Peace, in which I was desperately trying to prevent the invasion of Iraq by the U.S. That also failed. And then I wrote The Condemnation, which condemned that attack. And after that, I wrote a haphazard collection of poems called Small Poems, in which I essentially was venting and criticizing the Cheney administration's administration of that war. So I felt that I did my share in terms of trying to address major political injustices in my own country. And I have since given up the writing of poetry for the most part. And so I just don't feel any great obligation to try to act. However, I do feel an obligation somewhat now that I have become a reader to try to impact my own inner landscape about such things. And with the news that broke, I did something also which I rarely do, which is pay a decent amount of money for a book, and in this case all 3 books. I think one of them might have come cheaply. It's been over a week. I don't know how long it's been since I got this. I've been on the road a little bit, and I decided that throughout my whole life I have always heard the Israeli perspective of the conflicts with Palestinians, and I decided that I have to learn a little bit about the Palestinian perspective on things. And somewhere in the news items, I picked up the name Mahmoud Darwish as being a very important poet from the region. I believe he is dead now, but he was. And so these are various books that he wrote. can't even see what, a mural, okay. And as I say, this is a very extreme rarity for me to buy this kind of thing. Now this, Memory for Forgetfulness, it may well be prose poems of a sort. University of California Press, that may be the first thing to look at. August, Beirut, 1982. And this is just regular poetry. And this book, State of Siege, is poetry also, but looks very interesting. And it's got the bilingual text. This has been my year for reading more Arabic poetry than ever. So we'll see where I get with this. I'll probably go for Memory for Forgetfulness first. I think the description referred to it as prose poems, but it looks like prose. And so I've just come off, or am coming off, of a long span of reading nothing but fiction, and I think I will move into reading nonfiction now that Nonfiction November, a booktube event, is coming into place. I may actually start a little bit early. So those are the first 3 books that I picked up of poetry. And then I was in a museum and just happened to see this on display. It's a Penguin translation by Peter MacMillan. He also translated Penguins, the Book of Ise, which is, I believe, also a canonical Japanese work. Again, I do not generally read poems in translation, but this book, I loved this cover so much. I just think it's beautiful. Now, this is from a collection of 100 illustrations of 100 poets, and some of them are reproduced inside the book. It would be nice to have the entire collection in full color illustrations, if indeed it's available. So look at that. I mean, I could not pass up such a thing. When it comes to reading poems in Japanese, my habit has been to get them as they pop up in novels. So I've never really read just poems of themselves. Penguin also has a haiku anthology, which I've heard is problematic in some way. I can't remember what's wrong with it exactly. And I've already read a fair number of these. They're very short poems, and the textual transliteration, or I suppose you might call it romanji, is provided as an appendix at the end, and it runs from page 223 to 241. So that's the complete text. So you can see how short it is. But a friend pointed out that Ivan Morris talked about having such trouble translating old Japanese poems into English that he ultimately settled on just aiming for something that sounds pretty nice. And that's what I expect from these. I try to conceal my feelings, but they are too much to bear. The reeds hidden in the low bamboo of this desolate plain. Why do I love you so? And this book, oddly, seems to have text that's done in boldface font here and there. I don't know if that's a mistake or if that's intentional somehow. And so I've read a good number of these already, and they are very pleasant to read. So again, I don't know if I'll be logging this or making videos about any of this, but I feel as a human being, and a reader, it's good to get different perspectives on things. So I will leave this video here. Thank you very much for stopping by my channel.